morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here today in the studio with Yehuda, Yeshurun, who was on a few episodes last year, actually in the last year or two even, and we managed to wrestle him back into the studio, and there couldn't be a more perfect topic for Yehuda to join us for. Today we are talking about quantum consciousness, which is a very big topic for us to tackle on Weekly Energy Boost, but I'm not even sure how we avoided talking about it until today. The energy, if you're listening on Monday, today is the new moon of Cancer, which if you listen on a regular basis, you know that the new moon is the seed of the month, and we'll talk about that as well today. But the influence, the energetically for this week as well, is asking us to focus on the impact of our consciousness, our mindset, our perspective, and then the extensions of that, which is our thoughts and our words and our actions. And hopefully in the next little while, we'll be able to break down how to create shifts in those extensions, first in consciousness and then those extensions, so that you can see practical and lasting changes in your reality. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we provide our listeners with the most practical and powerful tools to navigate the coming 7 days. We do that by gleaning through the wisdom of Kabbalah and sharing also real life examples and situations that illustrate the use of these tools and this wisdom. And inevitably, every episode offers wisdom and tools you can use any day of the week, any week of the year. And this week is no different because we have the two influences, both the weekly energy and the new month starting today. We want to be especially mindful, even if you're listening Tuesday, Wednesday, or 6 months from now, we want to be especially mindful. And that's when the reason we talk about the weekly energy is because the universe is bringing certain opportunities to our attention. If we use them, we acquire, it's almost like a video game. We acquire certain boosts. And if we're not aware of them, they tend to pass us by. And so this week we're focusing specifically on using our mindset, our consciousness, and our perspective as a tool in that process. Because today, the new moon of Cancer is asking us to be as mindful, be on our best, I always say best behavior. It's not only about behavior. It's really that if the new moon is the seed of the month to come, what that seed looks like, the quality of that seed is going to impact the entire month. And so we aim to be as kind, be as proactive, be as sharing, be as long-ranged vision as possible so that imprint lasts for the entire month. And Cancerians, like every sign of the zodiac, according to Kabbalah, it has its gifts and its challenges. The gifts of Cancerian, and therefore the gifts that we can all be infused with this month are, well, I didn't even plan to talk about this, so it's now I gotta load that file. They are the most nurturing of the zodiac, without a doubt. Nurturing, creative, sensitive, intuitive. Maybe the downsides or the challenges come from their need to feel safe and secure and to feel comfort. Everybody has a comfort zone, obviously. Certain signs struggle with being attached to their comfort more than others. And, Cancerians are also known for their great sense of humor. They often are very good cooks. Their homes are probably the most comfortable and well-appointed of all the zodiac as well. So if you need to upgrade in that department, this is your month. But more so, we want to be aware of what the Kabbalists teach are the opportunities of this month and this week. And therefore, I'm going to turn the mic over now to Yehuda Yeshurun.
Thank you, Elisheva. Thank you for having me back. Actually, I want to start with, because I thought this was kind of funny. My brother and I have a weekly class that we teach not quite a podcast, but we do share and read from the letters of Rav Ashlag, the founder of the Kabbalah Centre, and from those writings are many, many spiritual teachings that we share. And I start every class with saying, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and whenever you are in the world. And my brother, almost like 2 weeks ago, says, where's that from? I know I've heard that before. And then he's like, oh, that's Elisheva Ballas on the Weekly Energy Boost. She says that every time she starts. And I'm sharing this because I thought it was really powerful, because I don't know how much you even think about those words when you intro a class every time, but that had an effect on me without you even meaning to, right? Which I think is, it just goes to show the power that we have when we're not thinking, when we don't have any intent, forget good intention, bad intention. When there's no intention, we have a quantum effect on things around us that stretches who knows how far. Imagine with an intention, if we looked at everything we did, we said how the thoughts that we have, how much that can impact not just our life, but the lives of those around us. Which, you know, so I just think that's something that is, every morning when we wake up, that should be one of our first thoughts, is what kind of impact am I going to have on the world? And that might be a scary thought, because I don't think a lot of us, myself included, think I can impact, you know, my surroundings, the people I talk to, but, you know, what's happening halfway across the world, in London, in the Philippines, but like different places, like the things that I'm going to say today, the thoughts that I'm going to have, you know, what oat milk I'm going to buy at Trader Joe's, or like, that's not going to impact anything, right? So who cares? And so it might be a little bit of a scary thought. Maybe even start with just understanding how we impact ourselves. Forget the rest of the world, but start with yourself. And that, you know, ties into the energy of the month of Cancer, which the Kabbalists explain there are astrological influences to each sign of the zodiac. There are attributes that every single zodiac sign has, positive and negative. Like you had mentioned, my dad's Cancerian, so I related to all of those things, at least all the positive traits. He has very few negative traits. There are also energetical influences that go beyond just the sign of the zodiac. And one of the things that the Kabbalists explain is that every month of the year also ties into a part of our body, because our body represents the 10 dimensions, and within every aspect of that there are different layers of energy that are attached. The one that is connected to the month of Cancer is our eyes and our ability to see and vision, which we know it's not even from a spiritual perspective, just scientifically. When we observe something, we make it real. This is the idea behind understanding if something is a particle or a wave. The second you look at something, you make it real, like Schrodinger's cat, right? So how we see things, or how we choose to look at things in this month, will actually create a different reality for a different experience of the things that maybe everyone is going through. We can experience something completely different based on how we choose to look at and see the people around us, the situations that happen to us, because the way that we observe, instead of maybe how we judge, will be completely transformational, especially in this month.
I'm actually looking up Schrodinger's cat, because if I don't know what it is off the top of my head, I'm sure some listeners don't. But the idea is that, and by the way, I remember hearing about this, the reference is that whether an object or an entity is being observed actually changes its nature or how it's behaving. And the original, I think, maybe not the original, but a number of years ago, there was an article in Newsweek that talked about how scientists had finally captured the, they put, if I'm not mistaken, a ray of light in a tiny hole that came out of the other side of the box, in a tiny hole in a box, and the beam of light came out of the other box. And when they watched the light, it behaved like a beam. But when they weren't watching it, they recorded this. Even though it was being observed by, I guess, a camera, it wasn't observed by human eyes at the time, and it changed the way it behaved, which in turn proved a lot of what spiritual thinkers and spiritual thought had proposed thousands and thousands of years ago, is that our consciousness creates our reality. And I don't want to assume that our listeners have been listening for years and have heard us say that 200 times, but we often talk about how not only how we relate to things, or let's say on a very basic level, we assign meaning to everything that happens in our lives. So if a situation happens, and my favorite example is someone came to our teacher, the Rav, and said, I had an amazing miracle today. There was a terrible car accident, and I'm fine. I walked away without a scratch. And the Rav said to him, I had an even greater miracle today. And the guy was so excited. What? And the Rav said, I wasn't even in a car accident. And so another person can go through a car accident and look at it as the greatest tragedy. The car was a total loss. This guy at least was looking at it as a blessing. The Kabbalists teach that we determine what happens in our lives, so much so that it's actually our purpose. Part of our purpose is to bring light to things that may seem dark. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's just toxic positivity. Some things are they just suck. They're just bad, and don't be naive and don't negate that. Nobody's negating that. The Kabbalists propose that it's possible to both feel sad or in pain and know that whatever's happening is for my best. And it sounds contradictory, but that's really the role of humanity, is to bring light where there is darkness. And the interesting thing is that when we go into life like that, when we approach life, and that's really especially with today being the new moon of Cancer, I think if we could all, for this month, and we'll get to next month's assignment next month, but if we could all have that, take that responsibility onto ourselves to not allow the physical story, the details, to bring us down or to see the darkness, but rather to bring the light, so to speak. The Kabbalists teach that actually speeds up the revelation of the goodness. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of people going through difficult things, even health challenges, financial challenges, if you ask them, they'll tell you, I know it'll be okay in the end. Even, I'm working with a number of people who are having challenges with their children and different things like that. And they say, I know it'll be fine, or I know it'll work itself out. Yet between here and in the end, there's stress and worry and fear, lost sleep. There's so many different, we could have a whole episode on the health risks of living a life of worry and fear. But the question I always ask those people is that if you know it's going to be okay in the end, why not live in that reality now? Why endure the weeks or months or years of burden until the end, until it'll work itself out, and know that it is literally now working itself out? According to Kabbalah, and if you look at quantum physics, and that's really the reason for the title this week, is that quantum physics, the part of the purpose of quantum physics is to prove nature, right? To prove how reality works. And so when you look at the way that atoms and molecules behave, it really illustrates so clearly not the physical reality, but the spiritual reality. That how, if you understand the light and particle reference, you understand that literally the way that we look at things changes what's happening. And so therefore, in a way, I often talk about how you turn on the news and, you can just be very depressed and feel like it's the end of the world, because in a lot of places in the world, it looks like it's the end of the world. But if you turn on the news and you say, that may be difficult and that looks bad, and I feel right? It's not to be immune or numb to what you see, but it's to know that even the darkness is moving us towards something better. And the moment you assign it that, it goes from being a particle to being a wave. You're attaching that sad scenario you're witnessing on the news to collective transformation and growth. So again, it's part of our responsibility is to not be brought down, not to be insensitive, but not to allow the heaviness of what we see, the darkness, to weigh us down, and to be busy attaching it to the light.
I think even just the metaphor of a particle and a wave is so powerful, because as a particle, it's something small, it's a part, it's insignificant.
It's also separate.
It's also separate, right? It's a part. And then you have a wave, which covers tremendous amount of space. So we get to choose what kind of influence and energy and what kind of life just we want to have on our own. And it's a choice. That's really what it's all about. And the phrase that keeps coming to mind for those who watch Ted Lasso is one of his statements, be curious, not judgmental, right? Because when we seek to try and understand what's going on, I mean, just think about it, right? If we're talking about how we observe something and how this month is all about our vision and our eyes, we don't see 99% of reality. I don't know what's behind this wall that's behind me. I can't see through it. I mean, I was in the studio earlier, so I know what room is there, but I can't see, so I don't know what's actually happening. I don't see most of the world and most of reality. It would be almost, I almost hesitate to say the word stupid, but it would be stupid to think that based on just the things that I see, I know everything there is to know about a person or a situation or what's going on. It doesn't make sense to judge in that moment rather than try and seek to understand and be curious about what's really going on here. Is there more than meets the eye? And that's kind of, I think, the motto we need to have this month is there has to be more to it than this. Because if we approach things like that, then everything we observe, and it's really, it's a crazy statement to think, but if I observe something and judge it as negative, I take myself into a different part of the multiverse, which now all of a sudden, like every movie is suddenly about the multiverse, right? It used to be just Marvel, and now it's like literally everything. But I take myself into an alternate timeline where, yeah, it is bad. And suddenly I'm like, well, I knew it was bad. No, you made it bad. Or it can become something good, something positive. It's all about how I choose to observe, because it's so easy to think I know what's going on.
It's not only that, if you think about it, according to quantum physics, there's no such thing as time and space. Those are all constructs of our imagination. Theoretically, I should be able to put my hand through the table on which my laptop and phone and everything is resting, because there's more space in the table than there is actual physical matter, but our collective consciousness determines it's solid, so therefore I can't. If you think about it, and this is maybe a bit deeper, I usually don't go this deep, but that all of the misery that we experience in our lives is because of time and space. All of our unhappiness, all of our worries, all of our fears is because we are looking either at some situation in the future that may or may not happen, or because we're looking at a situation in the past that is painful, shameful, angering, etc. When we realize, and it's such a deep concept that it's one that's hard to hold on to for a long period of time. You can dwell, you can think about it and admire the world and your experience in it through this lens, and then usually the thought escapes. But to realize that if I didn't confine myself to a timeline, and this is something I've been reading about more in like the emotional mental health sector, but if we realized the way that our expectations and our perceptions about what should be happening now, what should have happened then, and what should happen in the future, we would be happier. Like literally the key to being happy is living in the present. And that doesn't absolve anybody of responsibility for their actions. Like you can't slap somebody and be like, well, I live in the present now and that happened in the past. So it's as if it didn't exist. This is not a get out of jail free card. But the idea is that, and maybe we should actually, now that I'm bringing it up again, the reality is that by living by being unhappy or unsatisfied, disillusioned, being pessimistic, waiting for the other shoe to drop, all these things, this mild level of dissatisfaction that most people live in, it's actually a health risk. That's one of the things I'm reading about, and that fascinates me. It's almost like, if your body is a petri dish and you put sadness in the petri dish, bad things will grow, right? Like that's the idea, is that our body is this microcosm, and we agree that, if you talk to your plants will thrive. Think about the way you talk to yourself. And to Yehuda's point, the way we look at ourselves, right? If this month we can really, I guess it's this month and next month, shift the way that we look at things, the first thing we need to change the way we look at is ourselves. To realize that, yeah, I have stuff to work on, but I'm also exactly where I need to be right now. And again, it goes back to that right now. Not judging or beating myself up for what I did before, and not waiting for myself to repeat the mistakes of the past somewhere on down the line, but knowing that in this moment, I am exactly where I need to be. And the only real choice I have is, am I going to choose to attach this moment and the next moment and the next moment after that to the best possible outcome, to the light, to my soul? Am I actually, one of the things I did want to talk about is that the Kabbalists talk about, like, we have two different sets of eyes. We have the eyes of our body and our mind, and we have the eyes of the soul. And the real work is actually shifting those lenses from the lenses of my body, which is my mind, my rationale, my logic, my historical register that holds on to every little thing that I did and I said or was done to me and said to me, to the eyes of my soul, which can see from my origin to my completion. And when you're able to see through the eyes of the soul, you can see more clearly that this moment is exactly where I need to be.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, because when we talk about speaking to ourselves and about ourselves, there's this understanding. So we spoke about the idea that we don't see most of reality. I can't see beyond this wall. I also don't see most of myself. There's so much of me that I don't see that remains hidden because of how I observe myself, how I think about myself, how I talk to myself, how I judge myself, how I limit myself, how I assign timelines to myself. And when I don't meet those timelines, all of a sudden, I'm now less capable or less of a person or less this, or I'm a failure. There is so much that it's crazy to think that we look at ourselves and say, I know all there is to know about me, and therefore all there is that I can accomplish. And I think part of shifting that mindset, because I also want to talk about tools, how to get there, aside from just saying, observe life differently, I think practically one of those ways, and interestingly, it's also a really beautiful Kabbalistic understanding, is that the word for seeing or vision is re'iyah in the ancient Kabbalistic Hebrew. It's the same letters as the word yirah, which is awe, which involves which is a feeling, but it's how we observe things. And even science has, because you're talking about health, that experiencing the feeling of awe boosts the immune system. It does so many things for our skin, for everything. So when we just forget about the challenging moments in our life that now it's going to be difficult, challenging, uncomfortable to observe it instead of being judgmental. Look at all of the beautiful things. I'm here in LA for a little bit. The weather's not been great, so I almost don't want to use this example. But the last time I was here, the sunsets here are insane. And when you stand on the beach or in the street, honestly, not on the street, on the sidewalk, be safe. And you feel this beauty that's greater than yourself. And you're just in awe and appreciation of whatever force created all of this beauty. You can call it the creator, the universe, like whatever you want to call it. That experience, that feeling already shifts how we observe things, because now I'm observing something with a completely different lens, and it could be a piece of art. It could be I'm obsessed with my niece who's 10 months old right now. So every time I'm around, I'm in awe of just how we are able to grow as human beings. Before I had a niece, I was like, oh yeah, they're babies and milestones and whatever. I didn't really there was no sort of sense. I'm like, oh yeah, there's just at some point they start talking and walking and crawling. But I didn't really understand. But then you're like, oh no, there's a certain point where they can see color. And then they start actually reacting to things. And they can tell when you call them by their name and when they're calling. And they start having solids and they start drinking water. It's all these little things that suddenly now, when I observe it, I'm like, whoa, that's insane, right? And that feeling changes how we see reality, and having more of those moments every day. And we don't have to, it doesn't have to be a sunset. We could make those moments every single day, right? We can make them. It's so easy.
You know what I love about what you just said is that you didn't know that before, meaning I don't want to say that you were blind, but it's there was a whole experience that you were missing. And that now it's not only about, again, watching a sweet thing like your niece grow up. I think it's a eye-opening, heart-opening, mind-opening experience. It's magical, not less than the sunset. But part of, I think, understanding what the Kabbalists are trying to teach us is that we are all, to one degree or another, blind. That ability to see, you see something now and you say about, how did I miss that? Or, I was going to out myself. Sometimes I'm looking for my phone while I'm on the phone, or with my phone in my hand with the flashlight on, looking for, you know what I mean? That we have these moments where we clearly see that we don't see, but there's also the process of life that constantly pushes us to peel back another layer and see more deeply and profoundly and clearly. And I've had the chance to meet many people over the years who have gone through deeply difficult and painful experiences without even losing loved ones, very serious health difficulties. And they will tell you that they're so grateful for it because of how much more fill in the blank they are right now, whether it's compassionate, sensitive, loving, appreciative, gracious. There's so much blessing and benefit that people receive from experiencing darkness. And again, it goes back to that thing. If during that health challenge, if the person knew they were going to be okay in the end, they could have been okay already in the middle rather than waiting for the end. And so one of the amazing things that the Kabbalists teach is that the recognition of the blindness, maybe blindness is an extreme word for people, the recognition of how much we don't see actually gives us access to what we don't see. And I'll give you a really interesting example. I think it's interesting, of course. I was driving with 3 of my kids the other day on the freeway, and we were going onto a freeway on-ramp to get onto a different freeway, and a car came and literally, as though we weren't there, just went right into us. And luckily I had the shoulder But at full speed, we're talking like 65, 70 miles an hour. This guy tried to go into us. I went into the shoulder, but there's a wall there. And so my daughter, who was sitting in the passenger side, she said, I see sparks. Like we were touching, going against the railing, and we managed to both not hit the car. The car didn't hit us and we didn't hit the wall. So my kids were, first of all, freaked out. I think it was the closest they'd ever been into a car accident like that. And they were freaking out a little bit. And then we were talking about, once we calmed down, what really happened and how could someone do that? And I said, well, listen, I choose to believe that he really didn't see us, that nobody in their right mind would try to plow through a minivan full of kids going 70 miles an hour. Or he was so needing to get somewhere, maybe a hospital, maybe, that there was he couldn't even bother looking to see if he was doing something safe. And he just, I hope that he gets where he needs to go safely. And my kids were like, whoa, what? That, like, but he almost hurt us. And as we continued to talk about it over the course of the day, and they told different people because it was so shocking and it was like they came to terms with the fact that he meant well. And the fact that we don't know, the logical, rational mind wants to lash out at him. You endangered us. And again, I'm not removing any responsibility from said driver, right? He may even be listening to the podcast now. But for me, I want to be attached to the reality where it's all good. And it's up to me to attach myself to that reality and to attach the situations that I encounter in my life to that reality. Am I ever going to know why he did that? No. Am I ever going to know why the Creator put us in that car at that time on that highway? No. So I may think I know. Maybe, in my spiritual mother mind, I'm thinking, it was a great lesson. I'm grateful to the Creator. We had a lot of good conversations. And I think now they appreciate what it takes to drive safely more. Whatever meaning I think it has, there's 1,000 other reasons it happened. And the fact that I recognize I don't see the whole picture is slowly it's going to continue. That's really the beauty of it. The more that I recognize I have no idea why that happened, the more I'm going to see the 1,000 reasons why it happened. And that's a little bit of a benign situation. We could forget about it the next day. But especially in those situations that are important and impactful and meaningful, we get to decide if it leaves a scar or if it leaves us with that awe and that curiosity and that who knows. And literally, we will find out.
I think even if you start to think about all the thousands of reasons, there are things that it would be impossible for us to know because they're so far down the future. There's, it's a much longer story than this, but my great-grandfather, who was in World War I, was some kind of soldier. For whatever reason, he had taken these pink boots or something off of somewhere, was wearing them in combat. A grenade went off. He was buried under so many bodies with his feet pointed up. And that was what got the other soldiers' attention to save him. Otherwise, he would have been left there. He would have suffocated and died. And, in his mind, I'm sure he's thinking, oh, that's the reason why this happened and so many things. He never met me. He has no idea that that is the reason that I'm here, among many other reasons that I'm here, right? There are things that are so far, and to me, thinking about those things is also, it just brings me awe, because there are things that I will never even find out, but have such powerful reasons for existing. That there are sort of two schools of thought in terms of spirituality, how to view ourselves and the Creator, right? You do start to first look at how great the Creator is, and from there see how that is manifesting into every aspect of creation around you? Or do you first look to see how small you are to be able to recognize the Creator? And they both work, and I think different strokes for different folks, as the saying goes, right? But just sometimes seeing how much greater everything is and how you can just be a part of it, to me, fills me with so much awe and appreciation for life, and just, you know, knowing that I will never know everything, but I want to know more than I know now.
Well, I think that's what draws us to movies and books and TV shows, is like these intricate connections. I always marvel at the people who write these stories, that they have the vision and the creativity to connect two characters 3 generations apart on opposite ends of. Those are some of my favorite books, that like you find out at the beginning and the end who's who. But that's really the reality, is that the reason we're drawn to those stories is because we're meant to reveal them, right? That the details are ours for the revealing. And we're never going to know all 1,000. I mean, I use the number 1,000, obviously that's an arbitrary number, but the desire, and this is something so, you see it all over the wisdom of Kabbalah, whether or not we have one blessing or another isn't up to us. But we are here to have a desire for all the blessings. So I may not know why, but my desire to know why is important. And the desire to know why, I think, does bring a lot of people to study spirituality, right? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I doing, etc.? What are we all doing here, for that matter? And to realize that even those questions, that curiosity, comes for a reason. The Kabbalists teach our negative thoughts come for a reason, and we're meant to unpack them, unravel them, and extract from them some sort of goodness, rather than just throw them away or repress them or deny them or avoid them. So this is really probably one of the most powerful times of the year to shift how we look at things, to turn the random incidences in our lives, those particles, into a wave, to understand that even if we can't see, they're interconnected, and to seek the beauty, the interconnectedness, to seek the light inside of everything, by and within itself, will bring more light to the process and to the I'm going to call it a story. Yehuda, last thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think the last thing, or the final thought, is that the understanding that how I choose to observe reality is also how I expand my ability to see more. It's, you know, we talk about the eyes being the window to the soul, and in the Kabbalistic terminology, the eyes are represented by the sphira, or dimension of chokhmah, which is wisdom, which is the ability to understand more, to see more, to experience more. And how I choose to see things, and how many moments of awe. It actually says that, you know, ideally we should have 100 moments of awe every single day. And, you know, choosing to wake up and think, wow, I have so, you know, I have these blessings. I can walk. You know, we're talking about on the car ride over here about different places where we would like to live and how much we miss London. I mean, walking through London when I used to live there every morning, I was always filled with awe, because it's so beautiful. And these are the moments that allow me to understand and see and experience more of reality. So it's not just that, you know, by seeing things, I open up my ability to receive more from everything around me. That's really like ultimately the power of our eyes, is how I allow myself to receive from the universe.
It's a big responsibility. Okay. Well, thank you, Yehuda, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see if we can trap you back, delay your flight or something, so we can get you another round in the studio. Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can visit our website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where you'll find our archives, interesting things we want our listeners to know, as well as the opportunity to donate to support our podcast. And as always, we invite you to like, rate, and review, subscribe wherever you are, and share. The more you share, the more light you receive, the more light we receive, the brighter the world is going to be. Have a fabulous one, and we'll see you next time on the Weekly Energy Boost.